this special morning by prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are thankful. There are so many things to worry about and complain about and stress about, the world and politics, and personal problems. But this morning we come to you with an offering of praise as a sweet aroma unto you. A praise for life, the ability to gather in person, on site in Kenya and through technology, and to grant us time to prepare our hearts for these Sabbath hours, time to prepare a place. If you came to visit us in person, we would want to be prepared to welcome you in our lives. And we pray this preparation day is a day of preparing our hearts for the second coming of Jesus Christ. As we look at the land of Israel, history, archaeology, people, teach us how you have led your people in the past and will lead us in the future to the real promised land. Take everything out of our lives that does not belong. Simplify, cleanse us, is our prayer in the name of Jesus. Amen. Tomorrow for the Sabbath hours, a very special sermon. I just developed and discovered it this year. And it was somewhat by accident on my part, but God had it planned. I'm going to show you how the centerpiece of our message, the three angels' message, shows up at the cross already. And then I think on Sunday, I will share my testimony, how I discovered OTG. And then on Monday, I think I will talk about the Son of God. In particular, a lot of Proverbs 8, of course, Micah 5, the father-son relationship, and then we will go from there. That's the plan, but God might have other plans. We submit to him. His will not just be known, but his will be done. In 1995, my title is Location, Location, Location. In 1995, my wife and I had the opportunity to spend one semester in Jerusalem, Israel, Turkey, Egypt, my only time in Africa. Loved it, loved every minute of it, looking at the Middle East and the culture and learning. And then I went back in 2012 with a general conference, hundreds of pastors. We were on several buses. Elder Wilson was there. And we traveled all over the place. Also loved every minute again. So here we go. I'm stuck. There. Location, location, location. It is a fascinating location, and you are closer to the location, I think, than I am. Facebook, Middle East. What I love is looking at the people, praying for them, thinking how will they receive the gospel? Muslims, Jews, Christians who do not know the Sabbath, the sanctuary, state of the dead, health message. But we will start in the country of Jordan, a town called Petra. Petra means large rock. And that is important to understand the origin of the church, because in Matthew 16, Jesus said, and on this rock, I will build my church. In the Middle East, there's a lot of rock. And when Jesus said, on this rock, I will build my church, was he referring to Peter? Peter in Greek, Petros, means little rock. And if I were present in Kenya in person, I would show the young children how I can juggle with 3 rocks. But Petra means large rock, even mountain. And Jesus said, on this mountain, on this larger rock, I will build my church. And according to 1 Corinthians 10, verse 4, I believe, he was referring directly to himself. And Jesus himself also said in Matthew 7, build your house upon the rock, not the little rock, but the big rock. All right, this is the city of Petra, and it was rediscovered, I think it was Swiss traveler archaeologist, has a secret entrance, hard to find if you don't know where it is. Right where the horse's head is, you can see a water channel, and that is how they channel water into the city. Water is very important in the Middle East, in Africa as well, and now in Western United States, drying up, also a big issue. And so they tried to capture all the water naturally as much as they could when it did rain. The famous city of Petra, here's the treasury, and you can see why the city is called Petra, rock, because it was hewn out of rock. And it is a reddish colored rock. Here's where we get the word Edom from. And Esau said to Jacob, please feed me with the same red stew, for I am weary. Therefore his name was called reddish. Adam also means, very, very closely related to the word Edom, means reddish colored, the first man. But look at this. This is a city built out of and into the rock. This is the publishing director of South America, Marco. He demonstrated that there were high places on top of these mountains where people sacrificed. And in the background, excuse me, you see a rock formation with a plateau. And this formation is called Seir. This is where the Edomites live. This is where the book of Obadiah takes place. And on these high places, people thought they were safe and became arrogant. This is why God sends Obadiah to these people in that location. It says in Obadiah 1:17, but on Mount Zion there shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness. The house of Jacob possess their possessions. This comes from Obadiah. He also warned the Edomites, do not be arrogant, otherwise an enemy will capture you. Tourists, we travel over there, take pictures, and go back home. But I'm wondering, these are Bedouin children. I'm wondering who will share the gospel with them. How will they learn about Jesus Christ? Growing up among tourists and these rock-friendly people. On the left, I hired this young man to take me far up to a temple so I could also see the tomb of Aaron. I didn't make it to the tomb. It's an 8-hour journey by donkey. And here's the trash pickup donkey in Petra. I loved looking at the little animals running around, lizards. And this was really interesting because there are Bedouins who still live in tents. They have cell phones, They sometimes have electricity. They don't have running water. They rely on a water truck to come and bring them water. And when you read through the Gospels and the value of water, Jesus, John chapter 7, making the statement during the Feast of Tabernacles, I'm the living water. And of course, the woman at the well. The country of Jordan offers these Bedouins an apartment in town, but some of them would rather live free like this and roam around. My question again, who would go and live with these people for 2 years, learn their language, and share Jesus and the everlasting gospel and the three angels' message with them? Who is willing to go? You see Abraham, the top left picture there, people live like this in those times. These are large tents, again, very friendly people, and you have to barter at the market if you want to buy something, especially as a tourist. They offer it to you for $10, and you say, no, I give you $4. They say, oh, we cannot feed our family with $9, and then you settle on $7. In this culture, it's interesting that the gift of Jesus cost everything, but it is free to us. But then discipleship, following Jesus, comes at a high price. But then Ellen White says, heaven is cheap enough. This, I mentioned this yesterday, I think Jacob crossed over the ford, the creek, little river of the Jabbok. Genesis 32, verse 2. This is where Jacob wrestled with the angel of the Lord. Now, we don't know the exact location, but it was somewhere along this creek. Ellen White says you don't have to travel to the Middle East to meet Jesus and get the feeling you walked where Jesus walked. Do you know how you can do that? You go to the poor people and help them, the sick, visit the sick, wherever they are, in Kenya, in Texas, in Germany. And that is how you walk in the footprints of Jesus. You don't have to become a tourist. This is the city of Jerash. And outside of the modern city, there is a square. Well, it's round, but the town square. And you see these columns where the red arrow is. That is the entrance into the, do you know what that is? Now, I made this slide for Americans, and they understand Walmart. That is our main place to shop for clothes, groceries, and just household items. This was their shopping center long time ago. And of course, they play music for the tourists, but I really want to show you something else. I don't think they know about Jesus either. There's still so much work to be done, especially in the Middle East. I was at the General Conference, San Antonio, Texas, in 2015. I stayed the whole week with my family. And I remember every division, North American division, Trans-European division, Euro-Asia division, they all had glowing reports of how the Adventist work is growing and they're baptizing people and they have pathfinders and everything is going well. We call them glitzy reports. And then came a representative from, I don't remember his name, from the Middle Eastern Union. And he showed the work being done, and then he said, we need help. I'm asking for help. We don't have a lot of baptisms. Witnessing is difficult in this part of the world, and it was a really genuine, from the heart, honest report, not just showing success, but the need to reach the people in the Middle East. Here's a temple of Zeus, and a story is told that lightning came about when people were too loud on earth and the gods wanted to take a nap. And the gods got upset because the people were too loud, so they hurled lightning and thunder to the earth. But I want to show you something interesting. Look at this column here. It is not anchored into the ground with metal or stones or wood. These columns are freestanding. They just stand by their own weight. But if you stick your finger in the bottom of this column, you can feel it move and sway in the wind. Don't stick your finger in too far, it will crush it. But you can feel the movement of the column. Interesting to me, because in the book of Revelation, the church of Philadelphia is promised they will be made a pillar in the temple of God. And I don't think that pillar will move. It will stand firm. Philadelphia experienced a lot of earthquakes. This is the site where Andrews University in Michigan does their excavations and digs every year, Tel El Jalul. And people used to do archaeology with bulldozers. They were too huge machine and move mountains, but that's not how it's done anymore. These are 5 meter by 5 meter squares. You dig with little shovels, toothbrushes, spoons, and you don't make a lot of progress, but you don't want to destroy or ruin everything. And archaeologists, we were there with Dr. Juncker and Dr. Michael Hasel from Southern. They said this, where the yellow arrow is pointing, I have water coming down. That green square, bottom right, where the fountain is, that might be the pools of Heshbon. These are the pools of the king of Solomon. He had refreshing swimming pools. I don't think they swam. And in the Middle East, you also find mikvehs, cleansing pools. Water is so refreshing. No water, no life. Here's Song of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 4. Your eyes are like the pools of Heshbon. So, gentlemen, if you want to make a compliment to the lady in your life you love, if it's appropriate, you say, your eyes are like the pool of Heshbon, and that is a compliment. Who will tell this lady about Jesus Christ, about the Sabbath, without the Jewish connotation, the biblical Sabbath, the sanctuary, what happens when she dies, diet. Here's again that picture of the shepherd. You've seen this picture before, but just fascinating, this separation of sheep and goats, like we have it in the third parable in Matthew 25. He separates the sheep from the goats at the end in the judgment, and the sheep follow close behind the shepherd. I want to follow Jesus more closely, and I want to learn to hear his voice better, the voice of Jesus. Saudi Arabia, I think, invests a lot of money in building beautiful, large mosques, and they pray 5 times a day towards Mecca. The moon is not from the moon god, but the lunar calendar. And my boys and I, we went to preach at a church here in Texas, 3 hours away. And on the way home, we stopped at a rest stop. It was Sabbath. And there was a man praying like this on a carpet, but he was facing the wrong direction. The boys said, should we go tell him he need? I said, no, it's okay. But prayer is one of the pillars of Islam, called Salat. I asked for permission. This Muslim family asked, you're a beautiful family, can I take your picture? And they They agreed, and they were proud of their little baby girl. And here's a family having a picnic. Who will tell them about Jesus? I don't know in Africa if donkeys are stubborn, but in the Western world, people think donkeys are stubborn. And this donkey wanted to look at us, the tourists, and not go with his master. Will somebody tell him about Jesus? Oh, I forgot to mention, in the background here, it's hard to see. I should have taken a better picture of it, but there's evidence of the Roman Empire in this area of Jordan. We're not in Israel yet. There are roads made out of stone, still visible in the ground from 2,000 years ago when the Roman Empire occupied this territory. We need a stop smoking clinic for this man, how smoking damages your body. I went to the mosque in the evening to watch evening prayer, and the leader of the mosque invited me home, and on the plate there, this was 2012, there are dates from Saudi Arabia, delicious. And they said, if you eat 7 dates like this, you can survive all day in the desert. We talked about religion, politics, and life. I knew there were ladies in the house. I could see them out of the corner of my eye, giggling and whispering and watching, but we did not see any women. It's a strict gender separation. Right. The publishing director, he didn't want to go with me. He thought it was dangerous to go to the mosque, but they were very friendly and welcoming. You're not allowed to video on the inside, but I wanted you to see how they pray 5 times a day, starting at 4:30 in the morning. And they have like a head elder who chants, and then the people respond and pray in unison. I had sound, but I guess my sound not on. That's okay. It's not dependent on the sound. But even the little boys prayed very nicely and didn't act up. The dresses, you dress the way you wish to dress. It's not conservative or liberal. No shoes, because the idea is, we see that with the burning bush and Moses, what you put your shoes on, you own. And the ground of the mosque you don't own, so you take your shoes off before you go inside. A lot of cultures practice that. Asian cultures, I was a youth pastor in a Korean church. We took off our shoes before we went into homes. And in my house, we have stickers, thorny stickers from the curse in Texas, and we take off our shoes so they don't get into the carpet. Now we're looking onto the promised land. It doesn't look very promising, but there was probably a lot more forest and trees during the days of Moses. But somewhere here on Mount Nebo, this is where I'm standing, Mount Nebo, looking onto Israel, Moses stood and God showed him the promised land flowing with milk and honey. We don't know how much vegetation there was back then, but I'm sure the temperatures were similar to today, and it took faith to conquer the promised land and do agriculture and survive. It required trust in God. Moses was told, Deuteronomy 32:49, go up to Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, opposite Jericho, and look at the land of Canaan, which I'm giving to the sons of Israel for a possession. We had a small group and went up Mount Nebo, and on a Friday evening had a small worship service, low key because it's Muslim territory. And now we're going to Israel. Israel has several areas. Beersheba towards Egypt, that's the south. Beersheba has now 200,000 people. It's a city that has developed in the desert. Of course, in politics, you hear about the Gaza Strip and the West Banks. You have the Dead Sea area, Jerusalem, of course, and Tel Aviv, and Samaria, woman at the well, and then you have this area around the Sea of Galilee. I love going to the Sea of Galilee and getting up early in the morning, 5 o'clock, like I did this morning for you, and watching the sunrise and spending time with God, because at the Sea of Galilee, that's what Jesus did. He either spent all night in prayer, late night in prayer, or he got up before the disciples did, before the sun rose, and spent his time in prayer. Desire of Ages, page 83, says, it would be well for us to spend a thoughtful hour each day in the contemplation of the life of Christ and let the imagination grasp each scene. Our confidence would be more constant, our love would be quickened, and we would be more deeply imbued with his spirit, end quote. And that is very meaningful. Imagine Jesus walking on this water. This is sunrise over the Sea of Galilee. Very peaceful and much more quiet than Jerusalem. And there are still fishermen 2,000 years later going out or coming back at sunrise from fishing. Yeah. One day, Jesus sat on the hills of the Sea of Galilee, somewhere where I sat, and then he turned his face towards Jerusalem, never to return until the resurrection. It looked like a sea of glass early in the morning, 5:30, 5:45. Yeah, just beautiful. And here I'm with Elder Wilson. We took a boat ride, and you can see these surfers. They're moving along fast. At the Sea of Galilee, you have these steep hills. You have temperature changes between the air over the land and then over the water, and that causes these fierce winds and storms and waves. And we know the story from the Bible where Jesus stills the storm. At the Sea of Galilee, several villages, I wouldn't call them cities, towns. And here's Capernaum. In Aramaic or Hebrew, Capharnaum. Kaf we have even in Germany. In Germany, we call a small village with not much in it a Kaf. That's a small village. So Capernaum is the village of Nahum. Scholars think it's not the Nahum of the Bible, but maybe a common name, the village of Nahum. And there's the synagogue. Synagogue is a Greek term. Syn means with, symbiosis, symphony, sympathy. We have these English words. And ago means to carry, to bring, to lead. So the synagogue is you're leading together, you're leading with, you're bringing the people together. Here is the ancient synagogue of Capernaum, where Jesus went to, here we say church, went to synagogue on Sabbath, and then walked out, I think in Mark chapter 2, and healed the mother of Peter, or mother-in-law. That's how we know Peter was married. You see the black sack in the background. That's where you put the olives. Then you attach these rocks to the beam, and the beam comes down onto the bag of olives. They get crushed, and the oil runs into the little container in the ground. The first 3 pressings are virgin, pure virgin olive oil. After that, it's not as pure. In order to have olive oil, the olive practically has to die. It gets crushed. And when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, God means garden. Semani comes from the Hebrew shemen, a called German noun, has the same vowels, twin vowels. So what is Garden of Gethsemane? That is the garden of the oil. And Jesus in that garden prayed a lot and got pressed. Here is where Jesus preached the Sermon from the Mount, and Ellen White speaks of a natural amphitheater. I don't know if she uses those words, but something to that effect. And you can see the indentation in the hill behind me as I'm taking the picture is the Sea of Galilee. What is unique about this is you can stand where the red marks are and preach up the hill, and your voice carries without a microphone. And now we have microphones, but back then people had stronger voices too, but Jesus preached to 5,000 and they could hear him. I love carob, better for you than chocolate. And here are carob pods. It is also the food of the poor. And it is mentioned in Luke chapter 15, when the prodigal son reaches rock bottom, he's eating these carob pods, somewhat bitter, not all that well tasting like that, but we now use it as a chocolate substitute. Look at this. I don't drink Coke, but you go to a McDonald's in Israel, and here it says McDonald's in Hebrew, from right to left. You read from right to left. The first letter next left of the M, the arches, the yellow arches, that's an M, and then it reads McDonald's. When you go there, you have a choice not between smoking and non-smoking. The choice is between dairy or meat, because Jews do not put dairy and meat together because of a law in Exodus chapter 25. Do not cook a young goat in the mother of its milk. Some scholars think that the Canaanites would cut up baby goats and then cook that in the milk of the mother and then spread it on the fields to fertilize the fields, to invoke the gods, to make it rain. And God said, we do not do that. Just trust me. Okay, trust me. Don't follow the Canaanites. Don't follow the cultures around you. Is that relevant today? The can says Coca-Cola in Arabic. Salam alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Kifalak. Alhamdulillah. I had one semester in Germany, but I didn't keep it up. In 1986, if I remember correctly, there was a drought in the Middle East, and the Sea of Galilee went way down, dangerous, because 80% of fresh water for Israel comes from the Sea of Galilee. They have a military station at the Sea of Galilee too to protect it, the pump station. And two men were walking along the shore when the water was so low, and they stumbled upon a wooden structure. What they did is they dug around the wooden structure, they pumped plastic into the wood so it wouldn't fall apart. Then they raised it when the water level came up again and floated it to a museum built just for the boat. And it was a boat dated 2,000 years old. It's probably not the boat Jesus sat in, but maybe the boats looked like that back then, and it would hold 13 people. And of course, with chemicals, they leached the plastic back out of the wood and kept the wood intact. But this is 2,000 years old. Further north, away from the Sea of Galilee, is the city of Hatzor. Scholars believe many people lived there, and we discovered something very interesting. Here is the city gate, and I drew these red arrows. When you come up from the walkway, you have to make a right turn to get into the city. Why is that? Most cities were built like that. You come up a pathway, and the final approach to the city gate to get into the city, you have to make a turn to the right. If you had your sword in your right hand to fight and your shield in your left hand, when you approach the city as an enemy, where is your shield? It is away from the city, which means you are unprotected as they're throwing rocks and fiery darts at you. So this was engineered, architecturally designed for maximum protection of the city. The shields, the protective shields of the enemy are away from the city, and you are exposed to what they're throwing at you from the city. City gate, of course, that's where the elders sat and took care of the business of the city. One example, book of Ruth, you can read about the city gate. And water. Water is more important than oil for life. And they dug these huge, what's called cisterns, not related to sister, to hold water and store water for the dry season. It does rain in the Middle East, early rain and latter rain. He looked at me and I looked at him. I wanted to pet him, but
guys, we gotta go.
Refreshing water. We went way up north and found the origin of the Jordan River. It is a little spring. You can't baptize anybody there, but then it gets bigger. It rushes down the mountain and then becomes a larger river where you can also baptize. Probably some of the snow from Mount Hermon up way up north, but it is flowing in the summer and very refreshing. Here's a little, I would think, Muslim girl enjoying the fresh water. All humans, we need water. We have so much in common, and yet we fight so much. This is a very important site. This is now called Caesarea Philippi, but or near there. But really, it is now called in modern Arabic Banias. It should be called Panias with a popping P sound, but the Arabs cannot pronounce a hard P sound, so they soften it to Banias. But if you look at the word ban and pronounce it pan, you hear something. John Harvey Kellogg, pantheism. God is in everything. God created the wood, so God is in the wood. Jesus, in Matthew 16, Mark chapter 8, he took the disciples away from the Sea of Galilee, even not to Jerusalem. He took them way up north, heathen territory. The prophets speak of Galilee of the Gentiles. So he's in a territory without believers. And this is precisely where Jesus asked the disciples, who do men say that I am? And the response is interesting because the disciples say Elijah, one of the prophets, Jeremiah. So the answers are not bad, but they're all wrong. The mission field around Jesus does not know Jesus. Okay? And that is still true today to a large degree. And you will discover on Monday that is still true even within the church. Then he asked, plural, who do you all say? In Texas slang, people say y'all. Who do y'all? Okay, who do all of you disciples say that I am? Do you understand who I am? And Peter answers for the group and says, I should read it to you. It is such an important moment. It is the origin of the church. And it tells us something about church that we miss a lot. Simon Peter answered and said, Matthew 16:16, easy to remember, 16:16. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Living God is very important. You can trace that. That is God the Father. And Jesus says, Simon Peter, flesh and blood have not revealed this to you. And it is at that moment that Jesus starts church. He says, you are Peter, you answered correctly. You identified who I really am in an environment that does not know who I am. And then Jesus says, and on this rock, myself, I will build my church. So now we understand church. We normally understand church is when enough people believe the same thing and come together to have church. That's not church. Church is, according to Jesus, in a mission environment. Church is when one person in a group correctly identifies who Jesus is, the Son of the living God. And at that precise moment, Jesus says, now we can have church. So in the mind of Jesus, of course, church is when believers come together, like you are. I'm looking at you. Of course, church is when believers come together. But Jesus is saying church starts when one believer correctly identifies the identity of Jesus Christ as the Son of God. Now we can have church. And I'm wondering about something. I'm thinking out loud. We hear about a lot of baptisms in Africa and in the Philippines, but not much in the Western world. I'm wondering about something. If we have a doctrine in our church that has become corrupted, that no longer teaches the full truth, that was worded now to make us pleasing in an ecumenical sense to other Christians. We've redefined who Jesus is, that the relation of Jesus to the Father. You understand what I'm saying, OTG? If we have misworded a fundamental belief, and I have proof for that, and I will share that testimony, I think, on Monday and Sunday, it is different from my original baptismal belief. Okay, the way it reads now is different from when I was baptized. If that is the case, no wonder we have a problem with the mission of the church, because we're no longer correctly identifying Jesus Christ. Does that make sense? And then how can God bring the people to the church if we're now misidentifying Jesus in a mission environment? This was eye-opening to me, this moment that Jesus starts church, not in Jerusalem, where all the religious people are, but he starts church where the non-believers are. A huge challenge to me. Most of my energy as a pastor the last 30 years has gone into church members. And we built the church. We built the building and we built the church members and give sermons to the church members. It's all about the church members who already heard the truth. All right, I need to stop. I'm starting to preach. But what a turning point. And it's at that point that Jesus introduces the cross. Ironically, there's an altar in Banias, modern day Arabic Banias. And back in the days of Jesus and long before, people sacrificed, including children here. And Jesus says, wrong, I am the rock. Okay, come to me. From the start, Jesus is instilling in the disciples that church means mission. The church needs to reach out to the unbelievers around them. Beautiful dragonfly. Look at this. Can you believe in evolution? that millions of years designed an insect like this, and it can live and eat and function? Here's an archaeological site. I'm not an archaeologist, but it's very fascinating, where the camera turns to the left and then stops. They found, I don't remember the year, a rock right where the signs are. And on that rock is inscribed the word DVD. And I'm not talking about a round disc. DVD means David, Melech David, King David. And this is the earliest written evidence that King David actually existed. And there they anointed King David, the inscription says. A little bit of politics. I'm way up north. Beyond this hill in the background is Lebanon. On the left side is Israel. On the right side, a few kilometers to my right is Syria. I will show you that. And so much trouble in the Middle East, so much tension, and there's a reason for that. Let me show you the pencil line. What I mean by that, when the countries were divided by Great Britain, I think 1948, a general in a tent here, I don't know where they were, but took a pencil and marked where Lebanon would be, where the boundaries of Israel would be after World War II, and where Syria then would be. And his pencil, the thickness of his pencil, covered the spring of the Jordan River. He unintentionally. And so fighting broke out over who gets to claim the 2 millimeters of the pencil line that covered the source of life in the Middle East, Jordan River, in that part of the Middle East. And Israel said that belongs to us. Syria said, no, it belongs to us. Lebanon said it belongs to us. And there's still tension over that because of agriculture. There is no water flowing from the Jordan River into the Dead Sea and then onward. The Dead Sea is dying. Okay? There's water flowing into the Sea of Galilee. But who gets to take the water out of the river? Other countries have these battles as well. There you see to the right of the pencil, Banias. Yeah, that's where that altar is. I got close to the Syrian border here on a hill, couldn't go any farther. You could hear the war, civil war in Syria. You could hear it. There were tanks shooting or practicing. So bad, the little town of Al-Qanitra, there to the right, had to be moved. They moved an entire town. But that is the border from Israel to Syria, 60 kilometers from Damascus. Yeah. Men fighting, always fighting. Now we're in the city of Nazareth. Unfortunately, they always build a big church over everything where something happened. I wish they had left it naturally, but this is where Jesus grew up. I like Nazareth because they have good falafels and they're cheaper than in Jerusalem. You see, if you look closely, some of the roofs are flat. And we know from Peter praying in Acts chapter 10 about these flat roof structures. You can be up on the roof praying. Every culture I've discovered has flat bread. You gotta keep an eye on the clock. 7 o'clock, so that is 3 o'clock for you. Okay, I'll keep moving on. I got distracted by talking about church and the truth. But every culture has these flat breads, and I find it interesting how different cultures make flat bread and heat it up. Intelligent design here, this half dome over a fire, and very delicious flat bread. You remember the story of Jesus and the paralytic coming through the roof in Mark chapter 2? That's a mission story. But don't get me started. Today, it's all about mission, not Israel, really. But bringing the man to Jesus is all that mattered. Yeah. But you see the roof structure, not a lot of damage. There's a rock layer and bamboo, and then beams, and not too hard to send a man through the roof. Here's an example how we tease each other, and I'm not blaming any religion or any group, because we all tease each other and give each other a hard time. Christians, Jews, Muslims, we're not always very loving and kind. Here's a sign near the church where Jesus grew up. The mosque posted this: whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, it will never be accepted of him, and in the hereafter, he will be one of the losers. Okay. But I've heard of Jews dropping dead dogs onto the tent in the market of the Palestinians. And we know from the Bible, none of us are innocent. Okay. Dead Sea Wilderness. Here's where David hid from Saul in one of the caves. Oh, this little guy, he looked at me and I looked at him. I wanted to pet him too, but I was afraid he might bite me. But there are these caves in the rock, in the mountain, and one of these caves, David hid from Saul and cut the corner of his garment. There's also En Gedi. En means spring, the spring of Gedi, and fresh water, refreshing water coming out of the mountain. Here's a little Jewish family. The boy looks like he did not want his picture taken, or he wanted to protect his sisters and look all tough. But they were tourists too. There's a candy bar named Knockout. Masada, famous hill of Masada. Interesting story. The Romans came in 68 AD, not in 70. They came in 72 and conquered Jerusalem. But some of the Jews escaped to this mountain, and they hid on this mountain for 3 years. And then the Romans did something. This is the famous destruction of Jerusalem that Matthew chapter 24 talks about. The Dead Sea has receded and is drying up. And here you can see in the square leftovers from the siege of the Romans in AD 70 to AD 73, trying to capture the Jews on top of the mountain called Masada. So this is real history that you can still see after 2,000 years. And Jesus says, this is a picture of the impending ruin of the world. Ellen White confirms that the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 is a miniature representation of what will come upon the entire world one day. The Romans built this ramp to get up on top of the mountain, and they found all the Jews dead, about 900. They committed suicide. And they found these little pebbles you can see in the top right corner. They found the stones where they cast lots who would make sure that everybody is dead in the end. But one lady and her, I think, 5 children hid and survived to tell the story. The Jews thought it is better to be dead than to fall into the hands of the Romans. Yeah, another little lizard. And here's the Dead Sea. I enhanced the picture a little so you can see the salt. If you have a cut anywhere on your skin, go into the water, it burns. But the Jews believe when the Messiah comes, the Dead Sea will come alive again. I don't know why not. My fish are supposed to move. Well, they're not. When the Messiah comes, the Dead Sea will become clean and there will be fish again. And they also believe when the Messiah comes, nobody will be blind. There will not be lame people. And so that's why Jesus is not the Messiah in their thinking. We will walk quickly through the famous caves of Qumran. They were discovered as being famous in 1947. Goat herder, shepherd boy, lost a goat, and he looked for them. He threw a rock into one of these caves, and something broke. It scared him. I think 13 years old. He ran home, got a cousin, came back, and they climbed into these caves. Right here. And they found scrolls, the famous Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, they didn't know they were the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then it's a long story. They went through several dealers and Bedouins, went to the market being sold. And then finally, scholars discovered these are the oldest writings of the Old Testament, an entire Isaiah scroll they found. Esther was not found. Esther does not mention the word God, so I guess it was not included. There's a pun here, a hidden message in the book of Esther. When God appears absent, he's present. He only appears absent. That's why God is not mentioned. Here's the famous scriptorium. Here is where the Essenes copied the scriptures. Very valuable for us to confirm the trustworthiness of the scriptures. Very meticulously copied, like this, the Hebrew writings. Dead Sea Scrolls. Now we're going to Jerusalem. I'm standing on the Mount of Olives. You see the graves. They are above ground graves. They're made out of limestone. And when you die, you're wrapped in linen. You're put into these above ground tombs. And the limestone is a catalyst that interacts with your muscle and flesh, and you are skin and bones in 1 year. If you're buried into the ground, you remain for a long time if you've been embalmed. But in the Middle East, so dry with the limestone, you decompose very quickly. In the middle is the Kidron Valley, and there you see the Dome of the Rock. And to the left, with the black dome, is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I've been in there with my shoes off. Jerusalem at night, what a beautiful sight. The Jews, and that's why I dressed in black, white, and blue, culturally, not politically. They dress in white and black to demonstrate that they know the difference between right and wrong. That's what I was told, at least the Orthodox Jews. Several cultures, religions in one place in Jerusalem, Jews, Christians, Muslims living together. I'm just going to... This is the Golden Gate. You notice that it is bricked shut. You cannot go through it. Ezekiel 44 verse 2, this gate shall be shut, it shall not be opened, and no one shall enter by it, for the Lord God of Israel has entered by it, therefore it shall be shut. Now, there's another story that supposedly the Muslims closed the gate, put an unclean Muslim cemetery, unclean in the minds of Jews, cemetery in front of it, because the thought is that the Messiah might come back through this gate. And so Islam closed it and put a cemetery in front of it so the Jews cannot gather there to pray. But we don't know if that's true or not. Here's a camel. I wanted to pet him too. He was a nice camel. No tourists here at the southern wall. There's the Al-Aqsa Mosque. If I go back real quick. Just 1 second. To the left of the Dome of the Rock, you see the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And I'm going up the stairs now towards the mosque with the black, small little black dome. I don't know if you can see that. I don't have a pointer here. Let me see. Yeah, it's hard to see, but yeah, you will notice where I'm at now. Here we go. Watch the stairs very closely if you can see that. I'm going to go back one more time. Watch the stairs and look at the size of the stairs. Small, large step, small step, large step, small, large, small, large, small, large. Why did they do that? This is the entrance where Jesus would have gone into the temple, the southern wall. It's all closed now, of course, but on these stairs, Jesus walked. They made these stairs asymmetrical because they found that when the stairs are not even, people fan out and walk out diagonally, and more people will leave the temple complex during holidays than if the stairs were even and you go straight down. Brilliant architecture, okay? And as I said, no tourists don't know about any of this. Here's a bar mitzvah. This is a celebration of a young boy becoming a man and becoming responsible to the law. For boys, it's age 12 to 13. For girls, it's age 11 to 12, because girls mature faster than boys. Yeah, we have to be honest, that's true. It says on his coat there, not a coat, prayer shawl, Baruch et, probably Adonai. Blue is the color of the law. And on his forehead, that little box is called a phylactery. That's pieces of the Torah are in there, because it says you need to have them on your forehead. I think God said in your forehead to make decisions according to my will. Bar mitzvah. Mitzvah is law. Bar means son, so you become a son of the law. Male and female separated again. Okay, strict gender separation, and they don't have. They do, but they still have scrolls, very expensive scrolls that they carry. I was fascinated by the earring of this young man here, his brother. That must hurt. The celebration of a bar mitzvah. Famous Western Wall. They don't call it the Wailing Wall. The Western Wall. That's the closest the Jews today can come to where the temple used to be. And some of these stones are left over from King Herod. Huge stones. I love going there, watching the Jews read and pray. If you look closely, they pray bobbing back and forth like this. I have more pictures of that where you will see this clearly. Since they cannot sacrifice animals anymore, they put their body into their prayer as the new sacrifice. The prayer is the new sacrifice, since they cannot sacrifice animals. There you go. And they stick little prayers, pieces of paper with prayers on them in the cracks of the rocks there. I was teaching junior Sabbath school at the time, and I had my class, the children write prayers, and I took them to Israel and put them in the cracks of those rocks. Here's the beginning of Sabbath. There's still daylight. They start Sabbath before sundown, and Sabbath. You need to guard the edges of the Sabbath. And if you have money, then you show your status and your religion with big hats, right? They cover their heads because they don't want to appear before God naked, with a naked head. Shabbat Shalom. I was told at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, your time right now, on a Friday afternoon, put my camera away, because pushing the button on a camera is fire. There's electricity, and that's forbidden on the Sabbath. And it was not even sundown yet. They have doors that are just for the Sabbath doors, because they will open automatically. Not automatically, you have to open them yourselves. Then you can walk right through it. They don't go on an elevator where they have to push buttons. So they have elevators programmed for the Sabbath that stops on every floor, so you don't have electricity working for you by pushing a button directly. But we have our own little rules, church community. The Jews, I think, are able to keep their identity because they kept their literature. They teach their literature and language. A culture without writing it's much more difficult to maintain it, your identity as a culture. But on the other hand, in an oral culture where stories are passed on from one generation to the next, it's very difficult to change the details. That's why we can trust the New Testament. You cannot just go to people who know the truth and say, Jesus took 6 loaves and 3 fish. The children would protest, say, no, it was 5 loaves and 2 fish, orally passed on and then recorded. You cannot change the facts. Right at sundown on Fridays, Al-Aqsa Mosque sends their Muslim prayers. The competition between religions. You see underneath the lighted tower, you go down the wall on the left, there's a kind of turn in the rocks in the middle of the wall. That's where the sacrificial animals were brought in. Wilson's and Robinson's arch, if I remember right. I'm not an archaeologist, I should brush up on that. But they say that's where the sacrificial animals came in. And here you see them putting their body into their prayer. It probably would distract us, but they're used to that. The father had to straighten out the 2 boys. They didn't want to pray, and they were wiggling around and not behaving themselves. There is no problem videotaping and taking pictures there. Not forbidden. I'm over halfway, but the clock is ticking, so we'll keep going. I might have to. Tomorrow is Sabbath, big sermon. Well, we will make it. This is Al-Haram Al-Quds Al-Sharif in Jerusalem, the noble sanctuary. If you look where the palm tree is to the left, there's this archway. And the Muslims believe Jesus, the prophet Isa, will come back a second time and go through these gates of judgment. The kingdom, Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, paid for the golden dome here of the Dome of the Rock. That is not a mosque. I read that a lot in the news, the mosque of the Dome of the Rock. No, it's not a mosque, that's a shrine. That's where Muhammad went to heaven. And that is where Abraham almost sacrificed Ishmael. Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac. Same location, Islam, Judaism, Christianity. That is the site. And that is where Melchizedek was priest. The Muslims practice foot washing, and we as Seventh-day Adventists should have the best opportunity and chance to reach Muslims. We don't eat pork. We don't watch bad movies, right? I always told college students that we don't watch bad movies. We don't drink alcohol. And we practice foot washing. So, you cannot go inside, take pictures, but I was able to do it anyway. My wife worries when I travel. This is inside the Dome of the Rock. And there is that rock where almost the sacrifice of Isaac took place. God doesn't want child sacrifice. Okay, Jesus died voluntarily. That's different from a child sacrifice. And Isaac symbolized the coming of Christ as a sacrifice for us because a substitute was found in his place. Genesis chapter 22. And the Muslims, they study the Quran. I've read the Quran cover to cover, and a lot I didn't understand, but I did understand that Allah is creator and Allah is judge. So some parallels, okay. Muslim woman who will tell her about Jesus. I need to go a little faster now, otherwise I keep you too long again. But yeah, the school children, and I find children around the world are very similar. It's only later they find that we should hate each other and should not get along. That's taught behavior and thinking. Children are very accepting. We played soccer with the Muslim children when we were there in 1995, and they discovered we're nice people, and we discovered they're nice people. Here's Gethsemane, this Some of the olive trees are still there, not from 2,000 years ago, but they're offshoots. What is interesting about olive trees is you can cut them horizontally and they will regrow. You cut an apple tree horizontally, apple tree is done, but olive trees, they will continue to grow. So a great symbol of God's grace, patience, and having a second chance. And in Romans 9-11, Paul explains that the Jews were cut off, then the Gentiles were grafted in and grew to make the Jews jealous to join them, and we would be one family of faith together and not have this separation and division. But here we are. They found a bone, an ankle bone with a nail through it. And then you see on the right side, the nail curved. It hit a root or knot in the wood and curved. But we have an archaeological evidence that crucifixions with nailing through the feet took place. This is a replica. It's not the original. The original, I think, is in the Rockefeller Museum. Here's a sad story. Okay, I've criticized Islam and the Jews. Now let me criticize Christians. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is where archaeologists think Jesus was crucified. There are two sites at least. This is most likely the site. I want you to take a close look at the right window. Towards the right side, do you see the ladder standing there? Okay. That ladder has been there for many years, and there's a reason for that. The wall belongs, the church is divided by denominations: Armenian, Greek Orthodox, Coptic, Catholic, Russian Orthodox, etc. Several Christian churches own the church together, but they cannot come to an agreement who moves the ladder, because the ledge on which that ladder stands is Greek Orthodox. The wall belongs to the Armenians, and the two groups have not come to an agreement who can go and move the ladder from cleaning the window. It has been there for many, many years. It is so bad. I don't know if that's true today, but it used to be this way, that the Christians could not agree who gets to open and lock the church. And so the key belonged to a Muslim family to open the Christian church. No wonder Jews and Muslims don't want to become Christians, because that's what they see. That's what Christianity is. It's burning candles and arguing and being unfriendly. So, yeah, huge church. I wish they had left it all alone and left it naturally. But this is possibly the site of the crucifixion. Of course, they build a lot of stuff around it, and monks yell at you to keep moving. And but they have found first century tombs right underneath that church, and you can go down there. A lot of tourists miss that part if they don't have a guide. Here's the other side that scholars say might be the site where Jesus was crucified. There's a tomb with a trench in front of it for a rolling stone, but the problem is it is not a freshly hewn tomb, and then therefore probably not the tomb of Jesus. But here's the empty tomb. There's a Greek Orthodox writing Alpha and Omega, and Jesus Christos, Jesus Christ, the Alpha and the Omega. Not far from that tomb is a rock formation that looks like a skull, Golgotha. And to irritate the Christians, Jerusalem built an Arab bus station with a minaret prayer tower, Muslim prayer tower, and the holy hour of Christianity, Friday 3 p.m., they play Muslim call to prayer. Here you have three cultures: Western, silly culture, okay, Jewish culture, washing his hands at a fire extension there, and a Muslim lady. I thought, and no insult, but I thought the man and the donkey mouth formation look kind of similar. I told the little boy in English, stand there, I want to take your picture, please. Min fadlak. And Shukran, shukran jazila, thank you very much. And he did, but he wouldn't smile. A little Russian Orthodox church. A lot of Russians have come to Israel after the fall of the Soviet Union. I have 5 minutes, no problem. Little Russian Orthodox girl. When I was in Israel in 1995, I think there was only one Adventist church there. Now there are dozens of Adventist churches, a lot of Russians in it too. He didn't mind to have his picture taken. He's funded by American tax dollars, I think. Dallas Cowboys. And I've never seen pink toilet paper either. I was just walking around Jerusalem taking pictures. These are up north. I went to a little village and walked around the village. They have apricots there and cherries, very tasty. These are Druze children. It's a sect, not really accepted by any religion, but a very special group who will teach Jesus there. Okay. Now you cannot go and witness and pass out literature. That's forbidden. But I've discovered in Bethlehem, there's a Christian bookstore and you can buy Christian literature in Arabic, and your bus driver, or if you take a taxi, they love gifts in the Middle East, giving gifts. And so what I started doing, I shouldn't tell you this on camera, what I started doing in the Middle East, I give the taxi driver a New Testament in Arabic and say, this is a gift from my family in Texas to your family. And then they accept it. And I'm not handing out literature evangelism. I'm sharing a gift. We have to do what we can do. Russian Orthodox nun taking care of the flowers. And then there's also modern Israel with modern Western stores. This is after sundown on Sabbath. 30 minutes after Sabbath, Saturday night, it's dead silent. But about 45 minutes after sundown on Sabbath, the city comes alive again. Oops. A Muslim wedding. They usually do not dress like that, the ladies, but for their wedding, they are allowed to dress like that. And it depends how conservative you are. Here we are at the tomb of Samuel, Prophet Shamuel, and they like to sit there and pray. And I guess the guy doesn't know yet that it would be better to just drink water to stay awake and think clearly than drinking Coke. The pool of Bethesda. You don't see a pool here because crusaders came and destroyed the city and then rebuilt it. And then somebody else came, destroyed the city and rebuilt it, Ottoman Empire. And there's not much left of a pool. But some Franciscan monks have dug up the pools of Bethesda. This is John chapter 5, where the waters moved and supposedly, and then you couldn't get to the water. And then Jesus healed somebody. The man, and I think the healing might have taken place right where the sun is shining, and I got the camera here. Now, the layer where Jesus walked is about 8 feet, right there. Okay, it's built up now, but this is where the healing probably took place. And there used to be pagan medicinal baths. Well, Jesus says, don't believe in paganism, come to me. I can make you whole. The man had been crippled for 38 years. 38 years is the precise number for the Israelites in the Old Testament walking in circles in the wilderness. 40 years is with the conquest and rounded up into the promised land, but the actual wilderness time is 38 years. So it is possible that Jesus is saying, I can heal not just you physically, but I can heal the entire past history of rebellion of the Jewish people. John chapter 5. I only have one picture on that. Very briefly, a 13-year-old boy was given a hammer in Jerusalem to clean out a grave. And he did, and then he played with a hammer like he should not have done that, and he beat on the grave with his hammer. And it broke, the grave broke, and there was a chamber underneath, and they found 1,500 pieces of jewelry, including this scroll right here. They unrolled it. They sent it to Germany. Germany refused. They were afraid to break it. They sent it to England. England sent it back to Israel. Israel figured out a technology to unroll the scroll. It's about 4 centimeters long. It is the oldest writing in Judaism ever found archaeologically, and it is the Aaronitic blessing. Yevarecha Yadonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai pana elecha v'chunecha, Yisa Adonai pana elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. And now ladies will carry that, a replica of that around their neck as jewelry. It's older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here's David and Goliath, where they fought, and David picked up the rocks right there. I had a colleague who asked a guard, "Can I pick up a rock as a souvenir?" And the guard said, "Oh, go ahead, no problem." And my colleague, Dr. Kilgore, asked, "So what if you run out of rocks?" The guard said, "Then we come with a truck and bring in more rocks for the tourists." So people are taking all the rocks from that place. Here's a bad, mean Philistine. But Southern Adventist University, they found a sword with Dr. Michael Hassel from that time period, okay, of David and Goliath. How are you doing? I have about, let me see, 20, 25 slides left. It's probably best I just take another 5 minutes and show you that and wrap it up, because we want to do something different tomorrow, something special for the Sabbath. The Samaritans still exist. The problem is they intermarry. A brother can marry a sister. And it's bad for your genetics. Of course, you're not supposed to do that. And it shows up when you look closely, the genetic effect on that. There's about 500 Samaritans left, and they still practice Passover with actual animal sacrifice. Okay? And I got to watch that. I only have one picture of that. Do you need wisdom? I went to Tiberias by myself to look at a famous site, not in the Bible, but with a good story. There's a famous Rabbi Akiba, and he couldn't read and write. And he complained to his wife, "I can't read and write, but I want to become a wise rabbi, teacher of the law." And she took him to a spring. It's a legend. It's a story. I don't know if it took place, but she took him to this spring in Tiberias up on the hill, to this spring. And she showed him the spring and the rock underneath. And there was a hole in the rock. And she said, "Husband, why is there a hole in the rock? What caused the hole?" He said, "It is constant dripping of water onto the rock." She said, "What is stronger, the rock or the water?" And he thought for a minute, and he said, "The soft water is stronger than the hard rock." And she told him, "Husband, if you study a little every day, you will break through the rock with your knowledge, just like the soft water, and you will become a wise rabbi." And he became the famous Rabbi Akiba. The Jews love stories. I'm told, I don't want to stereotype. We have so many stereotypes about Africa in the Western world, but I'm told Africans like stories too, the truth being told through a story. Here's a schoolgirl walking home, and here are the trucks of the Middle East, camels. You see intelligent engineering here. It's a vineyard. It's not well kept, but they're still growing grapes there. Do you notice the rock walls are diagonal with openings? That is so when the rain comes, which doesn't come very often. I was there March through June, and the end of March, it stopped raining and it got hot, dry heat, and it didn't rain again, not one day. But when it does rain, the water then runs diagonally down the vineyard, waters the plants, comes out, and then the next wall is diagonal the other way. And so it goes zigzag, zigzag down the hill, and the entire vineyard gets naturally watered. People are smart, okay? And you see here, this is a modern plantation with computer chips, GPS measuring, and every tree gets exactly the amount of water it needs. No water, no life. Water means life. Here's Palestinian territories within Israel. Israel is divided into Jewish territories and Palestinian territories, and I got into big trouble there. It was my last day. And I didn't want to waste a half a day at the hotel. The bus to the airport in Tel Aviv was coming at 11:30. I still remember that, 2012. And so I had a lot of time between 5 a.m. and 11:30. You can do a lot of things, exploring. I had been there 5 weeks and I still had a list of things to look at in Israel. And so I went to the tomb of Lazarus. It's in Palestinian territories, and the Jewish taxi, I was in a time crunch. It was my last day. I didn't have time for the bus. I took a taxi to the Palestinian wall, and they dropped me off. The Jewish taxi drivers dropped me off and said, we're not going over there. That's the Muslims, you know. But I crossed through the border and found a taxi to take me to the tomb of Lazarus. And I went into the tomb. And I walked in there, my camera, it was very dark. I had a hard time focusing. I hit my head on the ceiling. But I walked into the tomb of Lazarus. If it's the tomb of Lazarus or not, I don't know. And then I walked back out, pretending to be alive. Okay, I'm reliving Desire of Ages, page 83, let the imagination grasp each scene. I'm reliving the resurrection of Lazarus. And then I asked the lady outside selling myrrh and frankincense, I asked, where's the taxi stop to go back to Jerusalem? She said, they will not take you to Jerusalem. The Muslim drivers won't take you to the Jewish side. The Jewish side, anyway, you have to take the bus. I thought, oh dear, that will take forever. And it did. She showed me where the bus stop is. I got a ticket. I got on the bus, and the bus stop stopped at every mosque and at every falafel stand. It took forever. And then we got to the border crossing. It wasn't this one, but it was one of those from the Muslim side to the Jewish side. And soldiers came on the bus and asked for our papers. And I went, oh dear. I had no identification. I only had money in my pocket, no wallet. I had no driver's license. I had no passport. I have 2 passports, American and German. I had nothing. And they came to me and they rambled something to me in Arabic. I didn't understand. And I said, I'm American, tourist. I thought in Israel is better I'm American than German. And then they spoke in English to me. It was a female soldier with a machine gun. And she said, your passport. And I said, I don't have my passport. It's at the hotel. Her jaw dropped. Her eyes got big. And she called big soldiers, 2 meters tall with machine guns. And they came and she explained in Hebrew. And the soldier said, your passport. I said, I don't have it. He said, off the bus. Off the bus. Then I was put into concrete barrier. Was out of a backpack. I was a single guy, looked like a single guy with a tan and a backpack. Dangerous. They put me in a concrete barrier. They called the station manager. He said, we don't know what to do with you. You cannot cross back over. My bus is coming 11:30 to the airport and I'm stuck here now. He said, you cannot cross over without paperwork or a passport. I said, I'm a tourist. He said, prove it. I opened up my camera and oh dear, the first picture that showed up was this border crossing. And I said, in that tower, that's you. You're not allowed to take these pictures. You're not allowed to take pictures of military installations, military gear, or border crossing. So this is an illegal picture right here. He said, delete it. I said, I will. He said, now. I said, okay, I hit delete on the camera. Well, you still see the picture. Okay, I unerased it later on at the hotel with software. Now you know why my wife doesn't want me to travel. So I still have the picture. He said, show me the next picture. Next picture was all archaeology and tourist stuff. Okay, it was obvious I was a tourist. And I showed him the picture of the tomb of Lazarus. He said, what's that? I thought, my mission moment. Okay. I said, that's the tomb of Lazarus. He said, what's that? I said, that's where I came from. That is where Yeshua HaMashiach made Lazarus rise from the dead. I thought, this is my one opportunity. I can't lose anything. This is my one opportunity to witness. I said, it's where the Messiah raised Jesus from the dead. He said, oh, next picture. I showed him 20, 30 pictures. He said, okay, got it. I'll be back. He made some phone calls and then he said, the next bus is coming in 10 minutes. You don't need a new ticket. I will talk to the driver. It was 5 cents or so. It's cheap bus ticket. The bus came. He said, don't ever do that again. If you come here, bring your passport. I said, yes, sir. Thank you. Toda rabba, Hebrew. Thank you very much. I got on my bus, got back to the hotel at 11:15. My bags were already packed, hotel room clean. I never turn on the TV in a hotel room to keep my heart clean, and a clean place, clean person. And I got my stuff and I was on the bus at 11:31. Praise God. Have you ever made the same mistake twice in your life? I will tell you tomorrow that the same thing happened to me in Germany with the communists, but you have to wait till tomorrow. Okay, Tomb of Lazarus. Here's Bethlehem. There's a very small door where Jesus was born. They, of course, built a church, and they say it's to make you humble, but I think it's to keep the camels out because camels have gone into the church. There's the Orthodox priest. But this is the place where scholars think that Jesus was born. This is where the manger was then, and baby Jesus was laid. Again, I wish they would leave it all natural, but people always want to build churches. Here's a little hill of Jericho where they walked around the city 7 times. It's one of the oldest evidences of human civilization. The Hill of Temptation, there's a monastery built into the hill. I have 9 slides left, so I'm almost finished. If you want the Greek Orthodox, I think build this monastery. You can spend some quiet time, but it is also traditionally called this Mount of Temptation because the rich people and the priests retired in Jericho. It's a pleasant climate. They have oranges, also falafels. I love falafels. And this is where Satan showed Jesus the kingdoms of the world. The best city was Jericho. Okay? We don't know if that's where it took place, but maybe. Adventists have a man named John Widener who hid Jews in World War II, just like Oskar Schindler and others. And there's a garden in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem. And the Jews plant trees for Gentiles who helped the Jews in World War II under Hitler. My grandfathers, they did not fight for Hitler. One was a fireman and the other was a baker, and they didn't have to fight for Hitler, thank God. But the Jews plant trees for Gentiles who helped the Jews in World War II. And this Adventist, John Widener, there's a book called Flee the Captor. He has a tree planted in honor of him. And I found the tree, hard to find if you don't know where it is. And the Jews like to leave rocks on tombs of Gentiles who helped in World War II. So in order to draw attention to this tree, I put a lot of rocks around it so people would wonder who is that, and then maybe find the Adventist church. Okay. It was a terrible time. This is a Catholic priest. The Gestapo came, they took all the children. He said, if you take the children, I'm going with the children. And so you see the rocks that the Jews left out of thankfulness. I still don't understand it. How can my people kill 6 million Jews? Makes no sense. Why? Why? We had at Country Life, my church that I planted with my wife, I'm no longer in charge. I have no leadership positions because of OTG. But I still attend there, and we have had Brother Phodidus from Rwanda there. Do you know him? Do you know the story? Well, why do humans mistreat other humans? There is a museum there. I wouldn't call it my favorite place, but it is so touching. It reads some of the names of the 1.5 million children that were killed under Hitler. My grandmas went through that time and they never talked about it. Such a terrible time in Germany. They traded piano lessons for eggs. They didn't have enough to eat. In Leningrad, they mixed sawdust, wood, with flour, bread flour to make bread. Bombs falling in the house next to you. It's just horrible time. Yeah. But one day God will fix it all. And I think that's one reason why God will wipe our tears away. There are tears in heaven. Okay. They don't get wiped at the second coming. They get wiped when we get to heaven by God himself. And then there will be a new heaven and a new earth after the millennium, and a tree for the healing of the nations. We have done so much damage to each other. We will need healing among the nations. So that's my impression from Israel, and a fascinating country to visit. And that's the end for today. Shalom means peace. Shalom. Arabic, salam. Okay, similar in language. Let us pray here at the end, especially for the Jews and the Muslims and the Christians, that the Christians who are there might be genuine witnesses. And I'll close with this. It makes sense as a transition as we consider some one true God issues here in the coming days. I think if you embrace the message of one true God, a Father and a real Son in Scripture in the New Testament, then we have a better chance to witness to the people in the Middle East. I think this could open the door, because now we have a message that can make sense to the Jews and the Muslims that we believe in one true God, monotheistic, not denying the divinity of Christ or the Spirit, but one true God. This could open the door to mission in the Middle East. Let's pray together, and then I will see you tomorrow for Sabbath. I'm looking forward to it, to Sabbath and to seeing you again. Let's pray together. Our God, so much history, so many lessons to learn from the culture, from the history, from the Old Testament, from the people. We right away want to pray for the Jews and Muslims in Jerusalem, in Israel, in the Middle East, Northern Africa, around the world, that we can be more faithful in our theology, in our lifestyle, in our witness to them. I pray the message of truth and the three angels' message will not be stuck in books and libraries and in the church, but that the message will go to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, like the angels said in Revelation chapter 14, verse 6. A global message. Open up the doors, we humbly pray, that have been closed to us in the past. I also pray that we recover the true sense of church. Church not as a building with people preaching to one another things we already know, but preaching to people who don't know yet. A church that, according to Matthew 16:16, correctly identifies the true identity of Jesus Christ to the people around them. Father, grant us this particular grace, that everyone listening this very moment becomes a missionary, your missionary. In Jesus' name, amen. Let me close with a statement. When I was stuck at the border in Israel from Palestinian to Jewish territories, I learned something. When they trust who you are, they let you go where you belong. Does that make sense? That this border control manager trusted that I told him the truth about who I was. And when you do that, when they trust you who you are, they let you go where you belong. That will be true in the end. When you're trustworthy as a forgiven Christian, then you can go where you belong, back to the Garden of Eden. God bless you. Oh, let me see if I can say this correctly. Mungu akubariki. I don't know where the emphasis is. Mungu akubariki. God bless you. See you tomorrow.
We can wind up with few Sabbath preparation. Otherwise, God bless you, and God bless family, and we look forward to meeting you tomorrow. Thank you.
Asante.
Very good.
Thank you very much. We will see you tomorrow.